What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about Baldur's Gate 3 versus Diablo 4. And why do I want to compare these games? Because they are quite different. Even though from someone that maybe doesn't play both of the games, you kind of see, oh, it's an action RPG, it's like, oh, you're killing stuff, you're getting loot. Is it the same game? I mean, comparing something like Overwatch to Halo, yes, they're both first-person shooters and they are kind of in the fantasy realm. At the end of the day, they play completely different. But the reason why I wanted to compare them is because I get asked time and time again when I'm streaming, Sladra, is this game better than Diablo 4? What are your thoughts on this game? So to answer the question, I think a lot of people want to know, is this game worth my time? Is it, worth buying? Absolutely. This is not a sponsored video, okay? I think Baldur's Gate, for me right now, if I was to, review a video game and I had to decide which game I was to give Game of the Year, and the only options were Diablo 4 and Baldur's Gate, no question, Baldur's Gate. And it's weird because I'm a Diablo content creator.
You're fired.
And I was kind of on the fence because a lot of Diablo players started moving into Baldur's Gate and they're like, hey, are you going to be playing this game too? And I'm like, I wasn't a fan of the combat when I was watching it. And I still kind of prefer more of a live action combat versus turn-based, which is kind of where this game is set up. But the thing is, I'm so glad I decided just to go ahead and hop in because, well, I want to say I still will be playing Diablo 4, obviously, as a Diablo content creator. Diablo 4 right now, I've already basically finished what I needed to do in the season. I mean, you basically get the barber and you're pretty much at maximum power. There's nothing really else to do. I mean, you can go ahead and grind to level 100 with multiple characters, but you're gonna have to do that every single season, and I just don't really like the current setup for the end game. And while I want to say that Baldur's Gate, I haven't put the same amount of hours in, I can already tell you that there is so much more content in this game's current life cycle, because there's no like battle pass, there's no like season journey right now, but there is mod support, which actually increases the lifespan of this game. But going back to the question of, is this game worth buying? If you've ever played another game called Dragon Age Origins, it is very similar to this game, the very first one. This game is a fantastic game, by the way. If you guys have not played Dragon Age Origins, highly, highly recommended. But the combat is more in this realm versus like a dungeon crawler. This game is way, 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 way slower. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it gives you so many more options. I feel like your decisions in this game matter way more because there's characters that you come across. There's a lot more dialogue as well. But as you come across other characters in this game, instead of them just being like an NPC and it's like a whatever thing in Diablo, with the exception of maybe in Diablo like 2 and 3, getting the mercenaries, I really did enjoy that. That felt like that was like a nice sense of progression. But overall, the characters don't really matter too much in Diablo, because they don't really like join your party. In this game, they're joining your party. You get to use some of their abilities, and it really makes a huge difference in the game. And just traversing in the world, there are sometimes gaps and secrets, and I really like this old style video games. I always enjoyed games like Duke Nukem and Hexen. These are like really old school FPS games, or Duke Nukem 3D, where you would find some secrets. This feels like a game that it was designed in that era, and I think that that is a good thing, where there's not just a giant quest marker that says you have to go here, kind of like in Diablo. There's like a main quest and you just kind of do it. And the side quests in Diablo kind of felt meh to me. In this game, a lot of the side quests, they will open up dialogue. There's going to be a lot more options. You can side with them. You can maybe take a bribe. You can actually bribe other people. You can do a lot more things. This feels more like a true open world game than Diablo, where you kind of just move what feels like to be a linear path. And while I would love to see a Diablo game actually open up the branches for a design decision in terms of the campaign, well, you're kind of, stuck with the decisions that the character makes, which I really wish they opened up maybe in the future for expansions. I like the idea of choosing your own adventure, which again adds a lot more life cycle to the game. The next thing I want to go and show you guys that makes this game so cool is actually just this clip over on Twitter, and I want to show you how crazy this game can get over here. But so just want to play it out real quick. So what this person did is they set up a bunch of explosives, and like I was surprised that you're able to even do this in the game, and I thought it was so dang cool. So they're going to the top of this house, and you can like climb in this game, you can jump, and he's setting up this like giant chain reaction to just blow up everything. And I'm like, wow, this is really sandboxy. I like this idea that the game allows you to do these crazy things. In fact, there's so many explosions. The game actually has a little an oopsie here, but like nonetheless, being able to do these crazy things in any video game, just for like a content creator, you see the game just goes to a black screen because I guess it was just too much to handle, and it just explodes the entire like village next to this castle. And I thought that that was just so dang awesome, and I was like, okay, there's gonna be a lot more things that we can do for content. And on top of that, what's even cooler is there is mod support. This is one of my biggest things that I really wanted Diablo 2 Resurrected to actually have, and there's a lot more mods than just this, but this is like obviously one we're gonna be installing. But the fact that that there is mod support for the game, and it's like, you know, in its infancy. If you guys ever played Skyrim, you know how in Skyrim you can add so many things. You can add anime girls in Skyrim, you can do like whatever. And I think that that creativity is way better than any season that we're getting in Diablo, at least as of right now, because season 1 was a big disappointment for me personally. And I know I'm going to be comparing this game to Diablo a lot, and it's kind of a review, real early review of the game. But to sum it up in terms of like, is this game worth it? Absolutely. There's so many things that you can do, but the combat itself right now, I feel like I originally didn't want to play the game because of the combat, because it is very slow, and then like the way it plays out, just to kill like 2 or 3 monsters sometimes can take a minute or two, depending on if you're just trying to fight something that you really shouldn't be fighting. Like there is a lot of dialogue where you may be able to fight the person, you can side with them, you just have so many more options in the game, and that's, I think, its biggest selling point is the options. And I want to briefly go over to itemization. In terms of like the items, here are just some like items, and I'm going to kind of compare it to Diablo. So if we just look at this like legendary item, it has some things will give you some extra abilities, which I think is awesome, being able to gain abilities. This is way cooler than Diablo 4 at the moment. There's no like rune words we gain abilities from other classes, which is something that D2 had, and I think that that should be something that enters into the you know, game hopefully soon, because there's just not enough creativity in the game, I feel like, in Diablo 4. But being able to also have like, there's this thing called proficiency, and I don't know the itemization perfectly in this game, but in terms of what I'm seeing, it's a lot more interesting versus Diablo's itemization. I mean, I make video guides and stuff. Like if you look at every single stat, what is it pretty much doing? Well, vulnerable damage, crit damage, core damage. The other one is, well, when I make an enemy vulnerable, I can have extra crit, which at the end of the day is more damage. Sure, there are things that can interact with skills to make your twisting blade spin, or kind of do a little bit of a little spin on an item. Overall, it's just kind of more damage, right? Whereas like gaining new skills, I think it's just a more interesting approach. And there are other items in the game that I think are very interesting, where one of them actually makes it so like your character just like gains fly. Like I was looking up what are the best items in the game, because I wanted to also make this video a little bit better, but also I wanted to understand kind of like the game's mechanics over here. So you can just gain fly. And then there's another thing where like you can meet the class's proficiency. So like how it works in the game, and I think this is kind of cool, because in Diablo, you cannot equip certain items from other classes, right? However, in this game, it allows you to do it, but there's like some sort of a penalty via your character. And I think that that's way better, because I like my games to have open freedom. And this game allows for way more open freedom, especially when you kind of start off on the game. And as soon as like you make your character, and the character creation, by the way, is so much cooler in this game compared to Diablo. I mean, you have, look at how many races exist, and each one of the races have just different things, and people will interact with different races, and they'll call you certain things. And I think that this is cool. It makes the game and world feel alive, where, I mean, Diablo is just kind of depressing. Like most of the people that you meet, oh, please help me, my child, my something, bruh. I lost my bracelet, can you please go find it? It felt like more fetch quests, where these ones, they're kind of optional. Like one of the quests that I actually got was like, some guy was like, this area is just straight up death. Here, you can have the map, you go do it yourself, but death awaits you. And it kind of is more exciting, and especially since you're engaging with these characters. Like this one over here, in terms of I think this was like a goblin, and eventually you can actually fight your way through. But like what you can do is you can intimidate people, and it does require you to roll a dice. And this is where the game kind of becomes a little bit of RNG, and it kind of makes your playthrough unique, because you're not going to be able to get 100% of what you want to do if you don't build your character to have these certain stats. Because how it works is you get to roll, but if you build your character, you can have bonus points after the roll that adds them. So one of them might be like you require a 10 or higher on a roll to actually progress. Another thing that I do like with this game is you can have different save states, which allows you to select different options if you want to. But I plan to play through my first playthrough doing kind of things the way I want to do things, and then I might do a good playthrough, a bad playthrough. And the thing with this that I really like in Baldur's Gate versus Diablo is like I can experience a second character, and I can take a completely different path, which is a new game. With Diablo, it's like, I remember they were saying in terms of design, you could go wherever you really want to. Well, it wasn't really that accurate, because certain areas have like a monster level, and well, you can just walk over there, you're just gonna die. So like, what's the point? Because you don't meet the monster power level, your items don't match up. And I think that that's something maybe they can look at into the future. And what's weird is they've been scaling the game to like your character level, but then in a more recent update, there's like certain intervals of 5 levels where you just basically get less XP, even though they buff the XP. They're just doing a lot of things where I just simply don't understand, where they're taking the game in one direction and then they're taking it into another direction. Like they nerf all of our damage, but then they give us some extra damage. It's like, I just don't get why it feels like they're making a lot of big swings and changes for the sake of just making changes. Like a lot of the numbers in this game in terms of its patch and the direction the game is going is like, okay, we buff a bunch of things by 1 to 2%. In this game, game, when you level up, what I like about this game more, comparing it to Diablo, is like in this game, when you level up, you can have a lot more options. You just get extra HP, but then there's also a bunch of skills that you can select. And in Diablo, there's kind of a skill tree, but it kind of follows the dynamic of you have your basic skill, your generator, and then you have your core skill, and the rest of the things are kind of just like utility and buffs. Depending on the class you play, though, there's a bunch where like you just have to play. At the end of the day, the way that the game is kind of designed is you have 5 skills to do damage, and that's how kind of how your character is built around. I know sorcerers might be an exception because that's the mastery, but pretty much you have your 5 core skills. You pick the one that you enjoy the most. That's kind of how the game is played. Whereas this game, there's a lot more cool things that you can do, I would say, because you control multiple characters, and you can even play co-op, which I think is crazy. I haven't done any of that yet, but being able to have access to you know, these cool combos where this character is going to throw like some sort of oil on the ground, then you can ignite it, and there's combos and things that you can set up where you can throw an illusion. There was one character in this game, and I won't spoil too much about the story, but like it's this guy. His name is, he's a wizard. But basically, he has this ability to like make a hand, and like I could use this hand to like open up doors, because what happened was I opened up this door and it just was booby trapped and it exploded on fire. And what I did was, okay, and then I went back and loaded the save because it basically almost killed my whole party. So what I did was I used him to conjure a magical hand, and then I used the magical hand to open up the door, and then I didn't take the damage. And there's just really cool, innovative things in this game where it kind of wants you to explore, and it does have some setups where like if you didn't save, you do get screwed over. And I wish, like in terms of giving the game some feedback, I wish it did have more auto saves frequently so I can, you know, not get screwed over, because sometimes this game takes a while and you could be like put back 20-30 minutes behind if you didn't do like a quick save, or if the game didn't have an auto save checkpoint. But for the most part, like you can see, like I'm selecting subclasses. How is Diablo not have subclasses? You know, I played a lot of Guild Wars 1. That was one of my favorite MMOs, but like it had subclasses, and I feel like Diablo needs some sort of big edge to it that like makes it separate itself from like the other you know, action RPGs. Like if I was to ask myself, what does Diablo 4 do that's, you know, game breaking in the action RPG genre? And I thought about it. I'm like, well, it doesn't really have too many things. The one thing that I do want to give credit to is like the some of the druid skills, like they can count as other skills, but that's about as interesting as it gets. The Paragon board, at the end of the day, it's just more number stats. It's like you get to do more damage based on X condition. And the itemization, I've made videos dedicated talking about how I didn't really like the itemization, but in terms of itemization in this game, it's a lot more interesting, and like each character has their own inventory, and you can transfer items between the different characters that you have. And I like the idea of you kind of building an army. You really feel more of a sense of a progression in this game versus Diablo. I mean, once you hit level 50, there really isn't any sort of huge progression. Sure, you can get uniques in World Tier 4 that you might not be able to get, but does the game really change up that much? Whereas this game, I feel like, well, you can do a lot more cool things, and again, it comes down to the whole idea of it being open, and it encourages you to kind of try things, and I feel like it's more like games in the 90s in terms of a sandbox. But going over like the games, you know, since I'm titling it Diablo 3 versus 4, graphic-wise, I will say that Diablo 4 looks a little bit better, because I know some people are looking at this, they're like, dude, what is this game for? You know, is the Xbox 360 days? I think this game looks fine, and this game's selling point isn't that it's got the best graphics. I will say Diablo has some better graphics, but in terms of graphics, I don't really mind that. Like graphics and sound, they both did a good job. They're both fully voice acted, but in terms of combat, which you're about to see here in a second, and I kind of want to briefly talk about this, the combat is completely different. It's a lot slower. And again, this is more like turn-based. If you play like Final Fantasy Tactics, like this guy over here, he was like, you got to pay me a fee. So I could bribe him with a fee, or we can just go kill him. I decided I wanted to go kill him, and that might not have been the smartest idea, because this Goblin King boss was he was a little bit too tough for my squad. So like you can get punished for sure if you, let me go back a little bit here so you can see kind of how the combat works. So it is turn-based. It's kind of fast depending on if you have your hotkeys set up, but for the most part, it's a lot slower. You can see I have to move here, and then I got to use an ability, and like one of the abilities that I use on this guy, which is putting things to sleep, it's a pretty good effect. Or there's one where I can make them like just start laughing uncontrollably, and then basically they're not going to be able to do anything. And I think that that's just a more unique take on the game genre as an action RPG, even though kind of separate. Again, I always want to go ahead and mention, I've mentioned it several times, it's more of a comparable game to Dragon Age Origins than really Diablo or a dungeon crawler, because at the end of the day, it's a little bit different. I know, again, from just like looking at a screenshot, you see like the character, you see kind of like their circle HP, and then you have the end turn, almost looks like a mana globe, but and then you have a bunch more skills that you can select from, which is kind of cool as well. But yeah, I would say that they are a little bit too different to really give a fair comparison, but I could say objectively Diablo 4's endgame for most people is kind of lacking right now, and hopefully with seasons it will get better, but you know, I want to go ahead and say, like, confidently that if you enjoy games with, you know, open world like Skyrim or Dragon Age, that you will enjoy this game. It is 100% worth buying and is definitely worth your time. In fact, it'll probably be one of the best games of the year. And again, going back to the question, which one is better? I mean, again, they're in different categories, but I would say there's no way I could not give it to Baldur's Gate if I was to just kind of compare both of them. And as far as like the end game, I don't know what the end game of this is, but I know for sure I could play this game multiple times. I don't know if any of you guys have played like certain games where you get to choose like a good and evil, maybe a Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic or Mass Effect, but those games sometimes you want to play more than once. And the reason why I'm really excited about this game's future is it will allow mod support. And I think that that's one thing that Diablo 4 really should have thought about, because Diablo 3 with mods would have been a fantastic game. I mean, because in between seasons, you could still play the game. It was integrated into Torchlight 2. Come on, like, we had some of the people that worked on Diablo 2 work on Torchlight 2, and that game still has more players than Torchlight 3 because it has mod support. And I think that that'd be something that it would really open up the doors for crazier comebacks in terms of, you know, people coming back into the game. And they may update this game with expansions, and I really think Diablo 4 needs to really step it up very soon, because there's so many other games that are going to be coming out in the future in terms of the action RPG genre, and I'm going to be making a video on that in the future. But the short answer is Diablo 4 versus this game, they are kind of different, but I have to give it to Baldur's Gate right now. It is simply just a better game, and that is because it's just so much fun, and there's no like battle pass, there's no like crazy nerfs, there's no rubber banding. That's still an issue to this day with Diablo 4, which as a Diablo content creator, it's weird that I gotta say Baldur's Gate is better, but that's the current state of it. Do I want Diablo to be better? Well, I want both the games to be good, because I didn't just enjoy games. But I hope with time, Diablo 4 will be able to really step it up. But we've also got Diablo 3's new season coming out, so we'll be playing that. And in between, I plan to still continue my playthrough with this game. And I would say, to answer your question, yes, this game is absolutely worth your time, and I could recommend it as, you know, as a friend that asked. Yeah, this game's definitely legit, but it is slow. You can see, like, I'm kind of select my options. What is the best option in this scenario? Sometimes though, one thing that is a pet peeve, I'm not gonna lie, is like when something is right in front of you and you swing your sword. I hate missing. That is like a big pet peeve of any like RPG. I just hate missing when the thing is right in front of me, and it can happen. Or sometimes like the guy will live with 1 HP and he'll just like knock your party, or he'll get an insane crit. So there is a little bit of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. Or sometimes you get really lucky, like you did in my second part of my playthrough. I would have lost 45 minutes on gameplay if my character didn't dodge 2 times and then me landing like a high number on like an attack. So there is kind of hype moments with that, but I think there's going to be a lot more content that can be done with this game for sure. But anyways, I'll be uploading more stuff with this game, but confidently, yeah, Baldur's Gate 3 is worth it. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. I'm curious to know your guys' thoughts between this game and Diablo. Again, I think they're both pretty decent games, but Diablo 4, it needs to pick up the end game. Whereas this game, well, I'll have to wait and see for that. But that's my early like impressions, since a lot of you guys want to know my thoughts, and those are my thoughts on it. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn that bell if you'd like to see more in the future, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.